So I think it's good we start with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim ghayri al-maghdubi alayhim wa lad-dallin. Sadaqa Allahu al-'aliyyul 'azim. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعن الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين آمين يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So this is the 13th part of our series titled The Art of Supplication, which is an ongoing exploration into the sacred relationship between the supplicant, the supplication, and the divine. The insights within this series are cumulative, and the nature of our discussion requires that each part build upon the foundations laid in the ones that came before. Therefore, to prevent any misunderstanding and to fully benefit from the depth of this subject, it is essential that everyone engage with the previous parts in order before they continue with this one. Nevertheless, we do have a recap, so if I can get a salawat, then we can move to the recap.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So in our last session, we continued our journey into the art of supplication by exploring the sacred windows of time. Having previously reflected on the daily and weekly rhythms, from the stillness of the pre-dawn to the abundant mercy of Friday, we turned our focus to the grander tapestry of the yearly calendar. We established that time in the divine view is not a flat, empty vessel, but rather it's a living map woven with cosmic opportunities and thresholds of mercy. We began charting this map by exploring 5 foundational stations. Number 1, the month of Ramadan and the nights of Qadr or ordainment. We identified this as the axis of the sacred year. It's not merely a month of abstinence, but a school for the soul, centered on the Quran's descent and culminating in the nights of ordainment or Qadr, when destinies are renewed in the presence of the living Imam. Number 2 was the 15th of Sha'ban. And we understood this as a bridge night, uniting 2 horizons. For all, it is a night of immense forgiveness, conditional on purging the heart of rancor or malice. And for us, the Shia, it is the night of hope, celebrating the birth of the awaited master, Imam al-Hujjah. May our souls be his ransom, and may God hasten his return. Number 3 was the 1st of Rajab. We framed this as the threshold of mercy. It is the formal invitation and gateway into the sacred trilogy of Rajab, Sha'ban, and the month of Ramadan. It is the first night and a foundational moment for repentance and renewal. The next one, number 4, was Mab'ath, or the 27th of Rajab. And we reflected on this as the dawn of prophethood. It marks a turning point in history when the first verses of Revelation descended, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, was commissioned with his universal message to perfect noble character. Finally, we looked at Dahwul Ard, the 25th of Dhul Qada. We uncovered the significance of this cosmic anniversary, the day the earth was spread from beneath the Kaaba, establishing the physical stage upon which all sacred history would unfold. Our central takeaway was that these moments are not simply dates to be commemorated, but rather they are living invitations from God. They are windows into our eternity, where the veil's thin and divine grace descends, demanding our wakefulness, reflection, and supplication. Tonight, we continue this ascent. Having explored the 5 foundational stations in our previous session, we now turn to the great Eids of Wilayah, that is Mubahela, Ghadir, and al-Zahra, the days of covenant, testimony, and joyful renewal. And in our next gathering, God willing, we will move on to the station of Arafah, the day of recognition and covenant, and then to the nights of loyalty inscribed in blood and tears, that is Ashura and Arba'in. And following on from that, we will be looking at the primary Eids of Fitr and Adha and other nights. So in his most beautiful name, and with a real yearning to be able to benefit from these luminous days and weeks and months of the year, we continue. Please give me a salawat and we move on to part 2, the days of Wilayah.
اللهم صل على محمد
محمد.
وآل محمد.
So if our previous discussion mapped the yearly seasons of mercy, tonight we study the unshakable axis around which they turn. We explore the covenant of Wilayah through three defining moments: its solemn proclamation, its living testimony, and its joyful renewal. So prepare your hearts and minds as we stand in awe at the gathering for Mubahela, the journey to the sun-scorched plains of Ghadir, and share in the sacred delight of al-Zahra. So the first one, Mubahela, when supplication became a living testimony. So in the divine method, spiritual truth is often demonstrated long before authority is formally declared. The unique and lofty station of the Prophet's household was revealed in just such a manner, in a pivotal event that transcended mere argument and laid its spiritual foundations bare for all to witness. When intellectual debate with the learned Christian delegation of Najran reached its limit, God revealed a final, decisive method of arbitration. That is Mubahela. This was not a clash of swords or arguments, but a summons for souls to stand as living testimony to the truth, demonstrating the unique station of the very household whose divine right to leadership would be a cornerstone of the faith. So let's look at the divine challenge. The Quran lays down a challenge that transcends mere rhetoric. It calls for both sides to bring forth the people most precious to them, to stand before God and to invoke his judgment upon whichever party was speaking falsehood. In Quran, Surah Al-Imran, the chapter of the family of Imran, third chapter of the Quran, verse number 61, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Should anyone argue with you concerning him," this was about Jesus, son of Mary, peace and blessing be upon him, "after the knowledge that has come to you, say, come, let us call our sons and your sons, our women and your women, and ourselves and yourselves. Then let us pray earnestly," and the word is nabtahil, which we'll come to in a moment, "and invoke God's curse upon the liars." Now the word nabtahil signifies a solemn, earnest supplication, a final appeal to the ultimate judge. This was not a casual debate. It was a spiritual summons where the price of falsehood was divine condemnation. The Prophet's response to this command would forever define who the people of his household truly were. Let's look at the embodiment of truth. The Prophet of God, peace and blessings be upon him, did not gather his powerful companions or his wisest elders or his largest tribe. He answered God's call by bringing the only 5 purest souls, the al-Kisa, the people of the cloak. Their presence was the ultimate argument. Their purity was the irrefutable proof. We have in the books of hadith, and all of the citations and references are in the write-up, but these hadiths are in both the books of the Sunnah and the Shia. It reads, "The messenger of God came out, and with him were the commander of the faithful, Sayyidah Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein, peace and blessings be upon them all. Addressing the Christians, he said, 'These are our sons, our women, and ourselves. Now you too bring your sons, your women, and yourselves.'" In this single act, the Prophet provided a living exegesis of the verse. Firstly, our sons, Abna'ana, wa Hassan and Hussein. Our women, Nisa'ana, was obviously Fatima al-Zahra, peace and blessings be upon her, the singular woman representing all the women of his household. And ourselves, Anfusana, was Imam Ali, whom God's verse designated as the very self or soul of the Prophet. Upon seeing these luminous faces, the Bishop of Najran famously said to his delegation, "Indeed, I see faces which if they were to ask God to move a mountain from its place, he would indeed move it. Do not engage in mutual Mubahela with them, or you will perish, and never will a single Christian remain upon the earth until the day of resurrection." This encounter reveals that true supplication is not merely spoken words. It is a living stance. a public covenant where the purity of one's being becomes the testimony to truth. So what does the principle of Mubahela mean in our lives? So while the historical event of Mubahela is unique, its principles are timeless and offer profound guidance for us today. Firstly, it teaches us that truth is not contingent on numbers. The Prophet came with only 4 people, yet their spiritual weight and conviction were more powerful than the entire delegation that they faced. In a world that is obsessed with popular opinion, social media metrics, and majority rule, Mubahela reminds us to stand for the truth with unshakable conviction, even if we find ourselves standing alone or in a very small group. Secondly, Mubahela highlights the family as a fortress of faith. The Prophet brought his immediate, sanctified household as the standard bearers of his message. This underscores that the primary ground for cultivating, preserving, and defending the faith is a righteous family, one that is built on purity or al-Zahra, love, which is mawadda, and knowledge, which is ilm. A strong Muslim community is built from the cornerstone of a strong, God-centric, God-conscious household. Finally, it reveals that our actions can be our most powerful supplication. The most eloquent dua is a life lived with integrity. When we embody the principles we preach, when we stand for justice, care for the oppressed, and exhibit noble character, our very existence becomes a testimony to the truth of our faith. This living testimony is often more powerful than any verbal argument we could make. Let's have a look now at our takeaways. So let us distill the lessons of this momentous day of Mubahela into clear foundational truths that shape our faith. Number 1, the al-Bayt are the divine standard of truth. Mubahela is an undeniable Quranic and prophetic designation of Imam Ali, Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, Imam Hassan, and Imam Hussein as the ultimate human embodiments of purity, truth, and nearness to God. They are not merely respected family. They are the very sons, women, and self of the Prophet by divine decree. Number 2, that supplication is an act of being. This event expands our understanding of dua beyond mere words. It demonstrates that our unwavering commitment to truth, our integrity, and the purity of our lives can themselves become a form of supplication, a living proof, a hujjah, that calls down God's favor and judgment. Number 3, that conviction outweighs consensus. Victory at Mubahela was not won through debate or force, but through the awesome spiritual presence of the Prophet and his family. It teaches a vital lesson, that the sincere conviction of a few who are aligned with God is infinitely more powerful than the arguments of many who stand on falsehood. And number 4, truth demands a willingness to sacrifice. To answer the call of Mubahela is to put one's entire existence on the line, trusting completely in God as the ultimate arbiter. It calls us to live our faith with a level of courage that shows we are prepared to stand by the truth, no matter what the worldly cost. Please give me a salawat and we move to Ghadir, the completion of religion and the axis of faith.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
So, there are moments in sacred history when the trajectory of revelation itself is at stake. The day of Ghadir is not merely a significant event, it is the climax of the prophetic mission, a moment so critical that God himself tied the very completion of faith to its proclamation. The Quran frames this day with a command of unparalleled gravity and a declaration of ultimate finality, the divine imperative. Now imagine, if you will, the scene. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, returning from his final pilgrimage with tens of thousands of companions. Before the caravans disperse, he is stopped by divine command, one so weighty that it carries the burden of his entire 23-year mission. The verse revealed was not a suggestion, rather it was an ultimatum. This is from Quran, Surah Al-Ma'idah, the chapter of the table spread, 5th chapter of the Quran, verse number 67. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O apostle, communicate that which has been sent down to you from your Lord, and if you do not, you will not have communicated his message, and God will protect you from the people." Now I want you to reflect on this condition. If you do not, you will not have communicated his message. This means that all the prayers, all of the fasts, all of the battles, and all the verses revealed over 2 decades would be rendered incomplete without this final essential message. The message was so crucial that God promised divine protection in order for it to be delivered. This was the proclamation of Wilayah, or divine guardianship. Under the blazing sun at the pool of Khom, the Prophet of God ascended a makeshift pulpit, took the hand of Ali ibn Abi Talib, peace and blessings be upon him, raised it high for everyone to see, and made the declaration that would echo through eternity. He said, "Whoever I am his master, mawla, this Ali is his master." And this is unanimously accepted. You can find all the references by the Sunnah and by the Shia. This is an indisputed mutawatir, as we call it, hadith. The word mawla here is not passive. It doesn't denote "this is my friend." It denotes mastery, authority, guardianship, and the right to command. The Prophet was establishing a clear, unbroken chain of divine leadership. Let's now look at the seal of perfection. Immediately following this historic proclamation, the seal of divine approval descended, confirming the significance of what had just happened. The final piece of the faith was now in place, and God declared the structure complete. Again, Surah Al-Ma'idah, the chapter of the table spread, 5th chapter of the Quran, verse number 3. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "This day I have perfected for you your religion and completed my blessing upon you and approved Islam as your religion." This verse reveals 3 profound truths. Firstly, that Islam was now perfected, akmaltu. It's kamil, it's finished, it's complete, because the mechanism for its continued guidance was now public. Secondly, the blessing was now completed, atmamtu, because the mercy of prophethood was now secured by the mercy of imamah. And this leads back to, in our Wednesday sessions, when we talk about imamah and prophethood being manifestations of the justice of God. And Islam, and finally, and Islam was now approved, raditu, because it now possessed the leadership principle that would protect it from deviation. Ghadir is not a footnote in history. It is the day Wilayah became the axis of Islam, the condition of our supplications, and the very spine of our worship. Let's now look at the living covenant of Ghadir. The lessons of Ghadir are not confined to the past. They are a living covenant that addresses the core challenges of our time. In a world adrift in confusion, fractured by countless interpretations and ideologies, Ghadir establishes the principle of a divinely appointed axis of truth. Wilayah is the strong rope of God that the Quran commands us to hold on to, preventing the community from scattering into sectarianism and error. It is the anchor of certainty in an ocean of doubt. Furthermore, living the covenant of Ghadir today means understanding that allegiance is an active, not passive reality. It is not enough to feel love in our hearts. We are called to align our character, our ethics, our social conduct, and our stand against injustice with the teachings of al-Bayt. To accept the Wilayah of Imam Ali is to accept the school he represents. More importantly, the rope of Ghadir extends unbroken through time. The covenant made with Imam Ali is the same covenant that connects us to the Imam of our age, Imam al-Mahdi. May our souls be his ransom and may God hasten his return. To celebrate Ghadir is to look to the horizon and renew our pledge to the living inheritor of that authority, preparing ourselves to be worthy servants of his government of justice. Let's now look at our takeaways. Let us therefore carry these truths forward with clarity and conviction, renewing our understanding of this foundational day. Number one, Wilayah is the perfection of faith. Ghadir teaches that Islam, without the clear line of divinely appointed leadership, is incomplete. Wilayah is not an additional pillar, but the keystone that locks the entire arc of religion in place, ensuring its integrity and longevity. Number two, the proclamation was a divine imperative. The appointment of Imam Ali was not a personal choice, nor was it a political suggestion by the Prophet. It was a direct and solemn command from God, upon which the very validity and completion of the entire prophetic mission rested. Number three, allegiance is an active trust. The declaration of Ghadir established a covenant, an ahad. This covenant demands more than historical acknowledgement. It requires our active loyalty, our obedience in matters of religion, and a sincere effort to emulate the al-Bayt in every aspect of our lives. And number four, the covenant is alive today. The guardianship of Ghadir is a continuous living principle, not a past event. Its authority today rests with the Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi. May our souls be his ransom, may God hasten his return. To celebrate Ghadir is to reaffirm our direct allegiance to him. In his absence, this covenant is not suspended. It cascades into the practical custodianship of religion under the Wali al-Faqih, a training in obedience, discipline, and unity that prepares hearts for the Imam's just government. This entire system is a divine preparation for believers, a crucial dry run, if you will, to cultivate the obedience, discipline, and unity required to be true supporters of the Imam upon his promised return. Please give me a salawat and we move to al-Zahra, the joyful renewal of the covenant.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The covenant of Wilayah is built upon two foundational events, the irrefutable testimony of Mubahela and the solemn proclamation of Ghadir. From this foundation, the 9th of Rabi al-Awwal, known as Eid al-Zahra, emerges as the covenant's joyful renewal and affirmation. It is the day the community of believers expresses its gratitude for the continuity of divine guidance and celebrates the victory of truth over falsehood. This is not a joy born of frivolity, but a profound spiritual state rooted in the Quran's call to rejoice in God's greatest blessings. Let's now have a look at this Quranic principle of joy. The Quran teaches that believers should actively express joy in response to divine mercy and bounty, distinguishing it from the fleeting pleasures of the material world. God commands his prophet, and this is from Surah Yunus, the chapter of Prophet Jonah, 10th chapter of the Quran, verse number 58. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Say, in the bounty of God and in his mercy, in that let them rejoice. It is better than all that they accumulate." The Imams of the al-Bayt have taught that the greatest bounty of Fahd and mercy or rahmah of God is the Wilayah of the Prophet and his progeny. Therefore, to rejoice in this blessing is a Quranic imperative. Eid al-Zahra is the manifest expression of this joy. Let's now look at the tradition of the al-Bayt. The significance of the 9th of Rabi al-Awwal is enshrined in the traditions of the al-Bayt. It is narrated that this day marks a turning point, a lifting of sorrows, and the beginning of the Imamah of the 12th Imam. May our souls be his ransom, and may God hasten his return. The narrations describe it as a great Eid, a day of celebration and gratitude. In a lengthy tradition, as reported in Shia sources, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family is reported to have described the virtues of this day, calling it a day of divine rest and a great festival. And the reference for the hadith is manifold. It's quoted by Sayyid ibn Tawus and al-Majlisi and al-Bursi and so on. You can find all the references in the write-up. But the hadith reads, it is narrated from Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman in a lengthy tradition that he said, I entered upon my master, the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, on the 9th day of the month of Rabi' al-Awwal. I saw him with the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and his two sons, Hassan and Hussein, peace and blessings be upon them. And they were eating. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, was smiling into their faces and saying to his two sons, Hassan and Hussein, the Prophet was saying, eat. May it be a blessing for you both by the grace of this day. For it is the day on which God destroys his enemy and the enemy of your grandfather, and the day he answers the supplication of your mother. So I said, and Hudayfa is saying, I said, O Messenger of God, does this day have a virtue over all other days that you have come to venerate in this manner, that you have come to venerate it in this manner? And the Prophet said and replied, O Hudayfa, do not ask me about the virtue of this day. It is the day on which God brought delight to the eyes of the family of the messenger. And my Lord, may his remembrance be glorified, revealed to me to make that day, which is the 9th of the month of Rabi' al-Awwal, an Eid, a festival for me, for my household, al-Bayt, and for their followers, which is the Shia. Allama Majlisi also quotes the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari, may God bless him, peace and blessings be upon him, regarding the day of Eid al-Zahra, the 9th of Rabi' al-Awwal, saying, and again, the references are all in the write-up. So Imam Hassan al-Askari has said, indeed, this day is a day of great status, and it is the day of a great Eid, and it is the day of the removal of black garments of mourning. The joy of this day is fundamentally tied to the core principle of tawalla, loving and aligning with the al-Bayt, and tabarra, disassociating from their enemies. One cannot be complete without the other. Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida articulated this principle perfectly, saying, the perfection of our religion is our wilayah, and the disavowal, bara'a, of our enemy. Therefore, the joy of Eid al-Zahra is the natural expression of a heart that has fully embraced both pillars of allegiance. Let's now have a look at the gnosis of the scholars. Our great scholars have understood that this day is not merely about history, but about a living spiritual and political principle. Imam Khomeini, may God rest his pure soul, spoke of the necessity of keeping the lines between truth and falsehood clear, stating that the political dimension of Islam is inseparable from its spirituality. And this quote, again, the write-up contains all the references. Imam Khomeini is quoted as saying, Islam is a government with its own affairs and rulings. Its rulings are comprehensive laws for human life from the day of birth to the day of death. This highlights that celebrating the victory of divine governance or Wilayah over illegitimate authority is a core part of Islamic consciousness. Ayatollah Bahjat, may God rest his pure soul, with his profound spiritual insight, often reminded believers that our connection to the Imam of our time should be one of active joy and anticipation. He is quoted as saying, the joy of a believer in the relief or faraj of the family of Muhammad is among the greatest acts of drawing near to God. Eid al-Zahra is the primary festival dedicated to this joy, nourishing our hope for the final promised relief. Let's now have a look at joy as a form of resistance. The lessons of Eid al-Zahra are especially vital in our time. They teach us that joy, when properly oriented, is not an escape from reality, but a powerful form of spiritual and political resistance. Firstly, it teaches us that joy is a principled statement. In a world that often pressures believers into a state of perpetual apology or grief, To openly celebrate the victory of divine truth is an act of defiance. It declares that our ultimate happiness and sorrow are dictated by our allegiance to God and his chosen guides, not by the fleeting trends of worldly powers. Secondly, this day reminds us that allegiance demands clarity. True love and loyalty, tawalla, cannot coexist with ambiguity towards injustice. al-Zahra forces a clarification. Our commitment to the path of the al-Bayt requires a conscious and principled disassociation, tabarra, from the systems, figures, and ideologies of oppression that have opposed them and humanity throughout history and continue to do so today. Finally, it teaches us about hope in the face of tyranny. By celebrating the downfall of past tyrants, we reaffirm our unwavering certainty in the divine promise that all injustice is temporary and all tyranny is destined to fall. This joy is not backward looking. It is a forward-looking act that fuels our resilience and prepares our hearts for the eventual and certain return of the Imam of Justice. Let's now have a look at our takeaways. So let us now therefore solidify our understanding of this day of joy with these clear and essential truths. al-Zahra completes the covenant cycle. It is the celebratory affirmation that logically follows the testimony or Mubahela and the proclamation or Ghadir. It represents the emotional, spiritual, and communal commitment to the covenant of Wilayah. Number two, joy is a core tenet of faith. Our religion is one of complete human experience. It is not only a path of solemnity and remembrance, but also one of profound joy in God's greatest blessings, chief among them being the gift of infallible guidance. Number three, true allegiance involves love and disassociation. To fully align with the al-Bayt, tawalla requires a conscious and clear disavowal, or tabarra, of their enemies and the injustices they represent. These two principles are the inseparable wings of faith. And number four, celebration is a renewal of hope. al-Zahra is an annual renewal of our pledge to the Imam of our time. It is an expression of our joy in his past and future victories, and a powerful prayer for his hastened return to fill the world with equity and justice. Please give me a salawat, and we have two small sections. The first one is the crescendo of covenant, from proclamation to the awaited dawn.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
So in our journey through the sacred calendar, we have walked a path illuminated by three pivotal stations of Wilayah. Our path began with the spiritual proof of Mubahela, a silent and luminous testimony where the purest souls embodied truth itself. From that spiritual foundation, we moved to the public proclamation at Ghadir, the sun-drenched plain where divine guardianship was established as the principle of imama for all time. Finally, we arrived at al-Zahra, the joyful affirmation and renewal of this sacred covenant. But what is the ultimate purpose of this journey? What is the collective lesson these days teach us about living a life of true allegiance today? It is to understand that Wilayah is not a historical grievance, but a living blueprint for character, unity, and hope. Let's now have a look at the true spirit of the covenant. The very figures we celebrate in these Eids provide the most powerful antidote to the poison of sectarianism. The Imam of Ghadir, Ali ibn Abi Talib himself, is our greatest teacher on unity. After the Prophet's passing, despite his divine right being usurped, he prioritized the cohesion and preservation of the wider Muslim community above his own personal claim. His legendary patience, or sab, was not one of weakness, but of profound wisdom, demonstrating that the unity of the Ummah was a sacred trust, and he, as the Imam of the Ummah, would discharge that trust. To celebrate Ghadir while sowing discord is to misunderstand the man at its heart. Imam Ali's patience was not passivity, but protection of the Ummah's fragile unity in those first days. To celebrate Ghadir while sowing discord is to fundamentally misunderstand the character of the man at its heart. Similarly, the lesson of Mubahela was not in the loudness of the argument, but in the quiet purity of al-Bayt. Their character was the proof. This teaches us that the most powerful way to bear witness to our faith is not by insulting others, but by embodying the sublime ethics of those we claim to follow. This brings us to Eid al-Zahra, a day that has tragically been misrepresented by some and misunderstood by many. Let us be completely, unequivocally clear, dispelling the lies that have been attached to this day by the ignorant. Eid al-Zahra has absolutely nothing to do with celebrating the death of historical figures, such as Umar ibn al-Khattab or the tyrant of Karbala, Umar ibn Sa'd. Such actions are born of ignorance and only serve to create strife. The true significance of the 9th of Rabi al-Awwal is profound and forward-looking. It marks the end of the 2-month period of intense mourning for the tragedy of Karbala, that is Muharram and Safar. And the hadith from Imam al-Askari we quoted earlier mentions it as the day the clothes of mourning are removed, for a beautiful reason. It signifies the formal beginning of the imamah of our living Imam, al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan, the awaited Mahdi, may our souls be his ransom, and may God hasten his return. We remove the black of mourning, not to close the book on Karbala, but to reopen it as resolve, turning grief into girded hope for the living Imam. It is a divinely ordained transition from sorrow to hope. We cease to mourn the martyrdom of the past Imam to joyfully pledge our allegiance to the present and future Imam. It is the dawn that follows the long dark night of grief, turning our hearts towards the promise of ultimate justice. Now let us look to a call to a higher Wilayah. Therefore, to reduce this day of hope into a festival of sectarian strife is the grave betrayal of its spirit. Causing division within the wider Muslim community does nothing to hasten the return of Imam al-Hujjah. It actively harms the cause of Islam by presenting a distorted and ugly image of our faith. The Imam will not return to bless our divisions. He will return to unite humanity under the banner of justice. The truest celebration of these Eids of Wilayah, that is Mubahela, Ghadir, and al-Zahra, is to build our resolve for his return, is to move closer to him by embodying his values. It is a day for renewing our covenant through acts of kindness, compassion, mercy, and love. It is a day to become more honorable, to serve our communities, our neighbors, to be a source of pride for the Imam, not a source of shame. Let this be the crescendo of our covenant, that we internalize the purity of the family of Mubahela, the unity of Imam Ali, and the forward-looking hope of Eid al-Zahra. Let us renew our pledge, not with words of division, but with deeds of cohesion. Let us strive to become the servants of whom the awaited Master would be proud, so that we may not only pray for his return, but actively hasten the dawn of his government of justice and love. Please give me a salawat and we move to the conclusion.
اللهم صل على محمد محمد.
So Mubahela showed that supplication becomes proof when purity stands before God. Ghadir taught us that allegiance is the spine of worship, and Eid al-Zahra trained our hearts to rejoice in guidance and renew hope. These are not 3 commemorations on a calendar. They are 3 movements of one covenant: the witness, the rope, and the joy. If the witness of Mubahela refines us, the rope of Ghadir gathers us, and the joy of Zahra strengthens us, then what comes next is the trial of loyalty in the fire. The covenant we renew in light, we will be asked to keep in night. In our next gathering, in our next session, God willing, we will move to the station of Arafah, the day of recognition and covenant, and then to the nights of loyalty inscribed in blood and tears, Ashura and Arba'in. These are not days of proclamation or celebration, but of surrender, remembrance, and resistance. Until then, let us leave tonight with a simple discipline. Tie every supplication to allegiance, every allegiance to character, and every joy to service. The witness is living, the rope is given, the joy is commanded. May we be worthy of all three. And finally, a practical pledge. So let us leave tonight not only with remembrance, but with resolve. Each morning and each evening, renew the rope. After Fajr and after Maghrib, name the Imam. Ask his Lord, ask our Lord to hasten his relief and align one deed that day to his cause. When the festivals of Wilayah arrive, do not let them pass like decorations in a shop window. Give in charity, feed a family, visit a patient, honor an elder, do a good deed, stand for justice. Let your dua stand on its feet. Refuse the markets of blood. Redirect your spending and clarify truth where it is muddied. This is the testimony of Mubahela, the pledge of Ghadir, and the joy of Zahra, made alive in our actions. Please give me a salawat, and we have the whisper beneath the throne, the short supplication before we finish for the night.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So the supplication tonight is titled Covenant in the Light, Loyalty in the Night. In your name, O Lord of the Covenant and the Witness, O God, send your boundless blessings upon Muhammad, the seal of the prophets, and upon Ali, the commander of the faithful, and upon Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, the radiant lady of light, and upon the Imams from her pure progeny, and upon the proof of your mercy, al-Mahdi, the son of Hassan. May our souls be his ransom, and may you hasten his return. O you who unveiled the truth of Mubahela, who completed the blessing at Ghadir, and who taught hearts to rejoice on the day of Zahra. O God, you tied our religion with a knot that does not come undone, the Wilayah of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Make our tongues faithful to that rope, our hands obedient to that rope, and our steps steady upon that rope. O Lord, you showed us that supplication is more than speech. It is a life that stands with the truthful. Place us amongst those whose faces are a prayer, whose deeds are a testimony, and whose silence is remembrance. O joy giver, teach us to rejoice as you commanded. In the bounty of God and his mercy, let them rejoice. It is better than what they amass. Make our happiness a banner of guidance, our festivals a covenant renewed, our laughter a shield against despair. O Lord of Hussein and his companions, prepare us for the nights ahead, for the thirst of Karbala, for the tears of Zainab, for the whispers of Sajjad. Let our remembrance become courage, our mourning become mercy, our loyalty become service. O Lord of justice, bear witness that we will not be silent before tyranny. We pledge to clarify and to resist with our words, our wealth, and our ways, to boycott and divest from those who profit from blood, to stand against genocide and every crime that desecrates the sacred life you forbade. Do not slay the soul which God has made inviolable. Do not kill your children, and whoever kills a soul, it is as if he has slain all of mankind. Make us people who enjoin right and forbid wrong, whose courage is mercy and whose firmness is truth. O most kind, most near, teach us to honor the elders who raised us, and tenderness for the unborn whom you entrust to us. Put on our tongues the prayer you taught. My Lord, have mercy on them as they nurtured me when I was small. Let our homes be sanctuaries of life, our communities havens for the weak, our hands a shelter for those the world calls inconvenient. O Lord of Muhammad and his family, as Imam Sajjad taught in the whispered prayers, we ask you to shelter and bless the scholars who guard religion with truth, the youth who carry the banner of purity, the children whose innocence is a trust, the women and men who walk the path of faith, the elders whose lives are lamps of experience, and every believer near and far. O proof of God, son of Hassan, our living Imam, to you we offer the rope of our allegiance, the witness of our deeds, and the joy of our hope. Accept our pledge, hasten your relief, and make us amongst your helpers and martyrs, and those who are not ashamed when the banners are raised. O most near, pour into our poverty the wealth of your mercy. Forgive what we fear to remember, heal what we cannot repair, and write us among those whom you proved by your witness, gathered by your rope, and gladdened by your mercy. Amen, O Lord, sustainer of the universes. Amen, O most merciful of the merciful. Wa akhiru da'wani alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.